Hi, welcome to another lecture of JS Yatra. In this video, we are going to implement clone deep function of Lodash. The level of this question is hard, so without wasting any time, let's get previous videos where I have discussed about the shallow copy and deep copy. Then if not, then do check out this particular lecture. It might be flashing on the screen. This is the place where we discussed shallow copy and deep copy, and deep copy is a part of a Lodash library as well, and that is what we are going to create today. So I am expecting that you watch the explanation between shallow copy and deep copy first, and then you start off with this video. All right. So in this clone deep function, we can see that this is a utility function of Lodash, and here you can see that we are having a array containing objects with key as a value 1, b as key value 2. And when you perform a clone deep on this particular object and you assign the return value to a variable deep, for example, and you try to compare the first array item of deep and the objects variable, you can see that it turns out to be false. Why? Because when you perform a deep clone of any object, be it array or object as well, so the memory reference is completely changed. So it doesn't reference to this particular memory anymore. It creates a fresh memory. Okay. So this is what the clone deep is. And if you haven't understood by this small example on the Lodash website, I have a pretty cool example for you waiting on the code sandbox, which I created. Over here, you see that we have a empty function named as deep clone, which will fill up when we start writing the code. And here we are having an object which is containing a key as a person. The name is Vedant, so it is a nested object. And here you can see that in the clone object, I performed a deep clone on this particular object, and the returned value got stored in the cloned object variable. Here, if I try to change the key name of the cloned object, so here in the commented line, you can see that I am doing cloned object.person.name equals to JS Cafe. So the value of name inside cloned object would be changed to JS Cafe. So I have written it here as well. Then change the cloned person's name to JS Cafe. And if I try to log out the same cloned object.person.name, it gives you JS Cafe. But if I try to log the name in object.person.name, it should still be Vedant and it should not be changed to JS Cafe. So this is what a deep copy means. If it was not a deep copy, then this particular change over here on line 9 will be reflected in the variable object as well, because that would be again a shallow copy. So deep copy and shallow copy, I hope you understood. If not, do check the previous video and then you come to this particular example and you'll understand it much better. This was about the question, and our task in this particular lecture is to create our own version of deep clone. Okay, so without wasting any time, let's dive into the code now. All right. So let us first of all uncomment this, because it will give us some errors because we haven't completely filled the function yet. But if I try to do a console.log, because this is what we'll be checking, console.log here again. All right. And in the deep clone, so we'll start off with the one-liner solutions and then we'll move to our main solution in the last. So for the one-liner solutions, I have two approaches. One is via using json.stringify, and the second one is using a structured clone. So let us start with first solution step by step. So in the deep clone function, all we need to do if we are going with json.parse and json.stringify is that you just perform a return and you do json.parse, and obviously you receive the obj as an object over here. Okay, you take this object and you perform json.stringify, and I pass this object. And let me go to the console over here and let me save this. You can see that the first one gave me JS Cafe and the another one gave me Vedant. So this JSON dot and JSON dot parse and JSON dot stringify we have already discussed before in the previous videos, where we discussed the shallow copy and deep copy, and I told you already that JSON dot stringify performs a deep copy and not a shallow copy. So I hope you remember that part. So since you remember that thing, this particular code which I written just now becomes much more easier. First of all, I converted my whole object into a simple string. And when I converted that into a string, then I parsed that string via JSON.parse, and this converted that particular string into a new object. Okay. So again, since JSON.stringify, what it did was, it was JSON.parse and stringify both performed a deep copy. So again, whatever changes we made inside this cloned obj wasn't reflected in the obj variable. So this was the first solution, JSON.stringify and JSON.parse. And if you write this, the interviewer might not be convinced. Okay, he wants something more from you. Then you can go to another one-liner solution, that is using a structured clone. So if we talk about structured clone, okay, the global structured clone method creates a deep clone of a given value using a structured clone or algorithm. Okay, so this is a inbuilt JavaScript solution for performing a deep clone. And regarding this particular thing, you can visit the compatibility section to see that, okay, if it is working or not for the particular browser or versions. So all we need to do over here was just copy structured clone. Okay, let me first of all comment this out. And we get a obj, and I just returned the structured clone over here. And again, you can see that it is working as expected. Is not defined. This is fine, I guess we can. Yep. So this is giving me, although this is not able to take up the structured clone, but it is there in the browser's memory. All right. So we got two solutions so far: structured clone and the JSON.parse and stringify solution. But again, as going with the rituals, the interviewer might still not be impressed and he wants more from you. Then you will come up with your own version of deep clone. So let's write deep clone is equal to a function which is going to take an object, and this object here we are going to write our algorithm. All right. So inside any deep clone, if I if I land on something which is not an object, okay, which is not an object or which is not an array, then performing deep clone on that doesn't make sense. Okay, what makes sense if you perform deep clone on one, okay, deep clone of 2, 3 or some string. So deep clone is only for objects and arrays. Okay, it doesn't make sense for numbers, strings. Okay, so first thing first, we need to check that if type of, or we can say that, let me once type equals to type of obj. Okay, if type is not equals to object, then return the obj as it is, because I am expecting an object from you. Otherwise, obviously we have to take care of null and undefined as well. So I can just write if not type, not type, I guess we should take not of object. Okay, if the object is falsy, if it is like already like false or like undefined or like null, then performing a deep clone over here doesn't make sense. So we performed some initial checks that if it is not an object or it is some like wrong value, be it a false, undefined or null, then please return that object or the value as it is. And here comes only two cases now, whether that if up till now the array can be either an array or it can be either an object. All right, because we neglected all numbers, strings, null, undefined, false. Okay, we neglected all these five in this particular line only. Now what left for us is objects and arrays. So first of all, let me check that if the item is array. So if array dot is array, you already know how we check array. We have been using this for a long time now in this particular course. So array dot is array obj. If it is an array, all I need to do is return return me an array again. Okay, because we are not flattening anything, we just want to keep things as it is. So if I'm receiving an array, it should the deep copied version should also contain the array on the same hierarchy. So if it is an array, then object dot map item. Okay, and again I recursively perform a deep clone on the item. Okay, this makes sense. Why? Because see, you are having an array of items. Okay, you are having, for example, over here, so let's say you are having an array can be 1, 2, or some object named as name Vedant. Okay, so for every array item you have to perform a deep clone. So it was 1 and 2 as a number for initial 2 indexes. So performing a deep clone would just give you numbers as it is. But since this part is an object, so it is very important for us to deep clone this. Okay, to deep clone this particular part and then have it inside a map, have it inside an array again. Okay, so we performed a deep clone of this array, every array item, and over here this is for the array. Okay, so if you are confused that how this object name Vedant got deep cloned, because only checks we have written so far is for invalid values and arrays. So hold on, because since we have not written the edge case for the handling of the objects, that is why this solution is still incomplete. So to handle cases for the object, we'll be using two properties of the object over here, that is from entries and entries. Okay, so let me take you to from entries. Yep. So the object from entries static methods transforms a list of key value pairs into an object. What it means, let me show you. So we have a map which says that, okay, this is a map and this is the key value pairs over here. Now if I want to create an object from this map, all I need to do is object.from entries and I pass the map over here, and it will give me an object with key values pairs mapped exactly. So you can take this value. So if you're not creating a map, if you're having an array as well, so if I take this, paste it over here, and I create an array out of it like this. Okay, this is an array of arrays, and if I try to run this, you can see that I'm still getting foo bar. Okay, foo bar and bas42 as a object from the array. Okay, so if you want to create object from arrays via key value pairs combination, object.from entries is the best candidate. Why we will need object.from entries is something we'll discuss as we write more code, but for now try to understand that if you want to create object from arrays via key value pair combination, object.from entries is your go-to person over here. All right, so we have done from entries, and there is object.entries. Object.entries. The object.entries static methods returns an array of a given object's own innumerable string keyed property values. Okay, the definition is quite complex, but I'll explain it in very easiest manner. So you can see that it is having an object with a, b, with some string and 42, and they want to iterate over each key value pair. So if you want to create iterate over everything, and if you perform like object.entry, so let me console dot let me write console object.entries and run this, it creates an array. Okay, so it creates an array of arrays. Object.entries creates an arrays of arrays. The first item what we have is array, which key and value. Did it sound something familiar to you? Right? We just saw this thing over here. Key value pair inside an array. Again, inside an array. What if we pass that to from entries? It gives you an object. So if I just pass object dot entries, which gives me an array, okay, with key value pairs. So a some string, b 42, and I want to loop over every item. Okay, so this is the crucial part over here. So you can see that if I, instead of doing for loop like this, okay, we can perform something like object dot entries dot map, and this is key, this is value, and we can get rid of this, we can get rid of this key value over here, and I just say console.log key comma value. See, this is your perfect candidate to iterate over maps. Okay, we iterated over key value pairs like this. This was the easiest way. All right, so we got our two weapons for the solutions, which is object dot from entries, and second was object dot entries. We got these two solutions, but the problem is how we are going to use it. The only way, the only use of like object dot from entries and object dot entries is to deep clone the values. What I mean by that is, for example, in this example only, this particular thing, a, let's say it has some more objects. Okay, what if this object contains an object contains an object, and then it contains some string? Okay, so again, if we want to iterate over each item, we also have to perform a deep clone. Okay, we have to deep clone this as well, we have to deep clone this as well, and we have to obviously deep clone c as well. So we have to deep clone the values. Okay, hear me out, we have to deep clone the values. What we did in this with arrays, we deep clone each array item. So similarly, we have to deep clone each value of the object. And how can you iterate over the object and have access to the values? You can do it via object.entries. By object.entries, you can iterate over each item of the object. But you also have to, after iteration, because object.entries gives you an array. Now after iteration, you have to convert that array into an object, because deep clone maintains the structure. If it is an object, it is an object. If it is an array, it is an array. If it is a string, it is a string. Number, it is a number. And inside the exact same hierarchical order. It is not changing the order. So to achieve that, hear me out. Let me repeat it again, everything for you. If we get an object that contains another object that contains an array, then we have to deep clone each value of the object. The value can be array, the value can be again an object, the value can be a string, the value can be a number, the value can be anything. All right, so to do that, we are deep cloning each value. For arrays, it was very easy. All we had to do was we have to perform a map, and in the callback function, we are receiving each array items, and we performed deep clone, and we return that thing inside what? Inside this function. Okay, deep clone function. But if you are confused that this is a recursion, okay, I hope you are understanding it. This is a recursion over here. So deep cloning we did. Okay, deep cloning over here we did for the values, and similarly we have to do it for the objects. So how we are going to do is, because it is very important that we have access to the values, and the only way to access value is using the object.entries. But object.entries creates an array. We have to again convert that into an object. So how we convert that to object is via object.fromEntries. Okay, I hope you understood this part, because this was the crucial step of this particular solution, and let me write it for you. So return object.fromEntries, and inside it from entries we are going to pass an array. So array can be, how we will generate an array? It is very easy. Object.entries, we pass the object, we get an array, and we are mapping. Okay, so far we got the array and we converted that to object, but we didn't deep clone the value. Okay, so we have to deep clone each array item. Dot map, and we get a key, we get a value, and we return a key and a deep clone value. So you can see that the output gives us JS Cafe and Vedant. And this was the deep clone solution for you. And this was very important because this was the complex part from entries and entries. And this is a hard problem. And if you haven't solved this before, it becomes really very tricky to solve it on the spot. So, and obviously this involves recursion as well. So the complexity of the question increases dramatically. So this was the deep clone implementation for you. I hope you understood this particular problem. If not, then please you can ask comments in the community section or on the Discord channel. And this was all in this particular lecture. I hope you like this and see you in the next one.